Hi everybody, I'm Akal Sahai, though if you're not Sikh, you might know me as Steve. Either way is fine, whatever works for you. Anyway, welcome to my YouTube channel, Be the Lighthouse. Big thank you to Eva, my first subscriber. I was really excited about that. Anyway, today we're gonna do something different, and I wanna read from my 16th book, Heroes of the Light. It's very different. It's a science fiction, action, adventure, romance, comedy, all kinds of fun things. It's not true time travel. The planets are all connected via these portals, so you can go through time and space. Anyway, let's check it out. I'm gonna start with the introduction, and we'll read a little bit of it. It's an era of hard times, and the people are worn and lean from countless years of strife. The darkness is ever encroaching, so much so that the question has long since become, what is hope? Because they have no concept of it. What do you do then? Do you surrender to the darkness, or do you stand against it as the odds themselves taunt you with the sheer impossibility of resisting? Heroes of Light is about they who dare. The question then becomes, do you hide in the shadows, or do you dare to do something about it? If no one steps up, though, our story is perpetually told from someone else's perspective, a fun method of storytelling if ever there was one. Let's see where the journey takes us. Heroes of the Night, Chapter 1. I was home on leave, out wandering around in the dark in the aftermath of a raid. There's not much else to do, and I'm not really sure why we do it. Sometimes I think it's to look for survivors, but mostly it's just to see what got bombed. Maybe that's morbid, but that's the way it is. Anyway, I was in this field watching the fires burn off in the distance when I ran into this woman, literally. She was dazed and more than a little confused, not to mention incredibly dirty, and her clothes were partially burnt. She, however, went into a full-scale panic attack when she heard the sirens. It's impossible to fake that level of terror, so I knew she wasn't an agent. I'd seen so many at the front, I could spot an infiltrator a mile away. Her eyes wide with terror, I could see the options racing through her mind. She was about to bolt when I grabbed her by the arm as she pleaded, "I'm not pure, I'm not pure." Headlights and a large spotlight immediately focused on us, and a large mechanized vehicle made directly for us. I stepped between her and the vehicle. I turned slightly and whispered, "I got this," but she was about to collapse. They recognized me even without my uniform, lit up as bright as day as I was. I had my papers, but she didn't. For her, they were a death sentence. Thus I said, "Take us to Klaus." They were only a little surprised that I knew their superior by first name, but I added, "We got caught in the raid. Wife doesn't have her papers." And with that, I pulled the unknown woman out from behind me. She was already living the role, so she definitely didn't need any prompting. It was a standard military police patrol, thus they dutifully and very respectfully, given who I am, led us to very comfortable seats in the crew area of the vehicle where they plied us with warm beverages and blankets. I pulled the wife close, and she quickly fell asleep against me as I regaled the crew with tales of Klaus and I at the front. We arrived at the station in good order and were immediately taken to Klaus's spacious office. He hobbled over with a slight limp and greeted me with a big bear hug. The wife, however, was scared out of her mind, literally in the belly of the beast, as it were. I played it off as I invoked the name of the enemy and detailed how we were caught in a raid. Klaus is nothing if not patriotic, and he swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. He, however, was highly upset. "Sarge, why didn't you tell me you were getting hitched?" I shrugged. "Calm blackout," which was true, and added, "Little woman's quite impulsive." He and I shared a hearty laugh, but she clung to me and buried her face in my chest. I dismissed it, saying she got shook up in the raid. Klaus nodded in understanding and pulled up my file. He spent quite some time reading my decorations and finally added, "About time you took that commission." I nodded and rolled my eyes. He, however, became concerned as he announced, "There's no record of your wedding here." I nodded and explained. "Church was bombed." Klaus let out a deep sigh. Even if she'd been an agent, he and I went back way too far for him to ever take another's word over mine, thus I knew he was on my side. I could see the gears turning in his head as he sorted it all out. We both knew how common stage weddings were to smuggle those the state had deemed undesirable out of the country. Thus, there were tests. No one needed to say what the tests were, but they make you prove you're married. Klaus sighed deeply and said, "God, Sarge, I am so sorry." He paused, almost in tears as he was. His voice cracked as he explained, "I gotta scan her and I gotta make you take the first test." He exhaled deeply and added, "Your choice of which we do first." I nodded. The first test was easy. The wife was pretty coherent, seated beside me on the comfortable couch in Klaus's office as we were. I reached out and cupped her face with both hands. She was awake and all too familiar with the tests. I didn't need to say, "Kiss me like your life depends on it," because she knew it did. Thus she melted into the role. Quite some time later, and highly embarrassed, Klaus finally said, "Get a room, you two," as he laughed, and I knew we were in the clear, even if we still had the far larger hurdle to clear. The wife seemed confident, even if she was on the verge of passing out. Klaus brought a hand scanner over and said, "Okay, sit up straight for me, please." She did her best to act like the experience was totally foreign, though we both knew she had likely been scanned countless times. He ran the device over her and returned to his desk, where he examined the readings. In exasperation, he finally said, "Well, this can't be right. Sarge, what's your wife's name?" I gestured to the aforementioned wife, and she replied, "Inga." Klaus nodded and asked, "Date of marriage?" I replied with the date my leave began. That was the reason I took the promotion, 3 weeks leave. Klaus nodded and typed and printed away, and he created new papers for Inga and updated our files. Satisfied, he presented them to Inga, who for her part looked as if she'd been pardoned because she truly had. We said our farewells, and Klaus added, "Gods, I wish I could go back out with you, Sarge." We nodded deeply, and he switched gears, saying, "You're both coming by for dinner tomorrow night, and I'm not taking no for an answer." I nodded and led Inga out of his office and said, "We'll be there," as he smiled and waved. I held her hand to keep up the act, and she seemed not to mind. Inga led us out into the street, down and through several valleys, before stopping to ask, "What just happened? Why am I not dead? And who are you?" I smiled and replied, "Are you hungry?" She nodded like she'd not ate in days. I explained, "I've got eggs, hopefully, if they had survived the bombing." With that, I led her to my apartment. I unlocked the door and gestured what my sister calls the wall of honor on the right-hand side after you walk in. It's filled with newspaper clippings, mostly about me, and a giant case filled with all of my medals. Front and center, however, is the clipping I'm the most proud of, and that's the one about my sister. I left Inga to gaze and learn while she fixed us something to eat. Thankfully, the eggs had survived the night. More than a little unsure of things, she gingerly entered the kitchen. I was in full chef mode, but paused to explain. "Don't worry, I don't expect anything from you. Klaus and I go way back. I'm the reason he has that limp instead of being dead. I'm on leave. We're legally married now. You can go anywhere you like." I could tell by the look on her face she had nowhere to go, so I continued. "You can sleep in my sister's room. She's at the front. Some of her stuff should fit you." I pointed to her room and added, "There's an adjoining bathroom. Just lock the opposite door and unlock it when you're done." She nodded and vanished down the hall. The sounds of water filling the tub were soon followed by those of delight, and I couldn't help but wonder what she looked like under all that grime. The table was soon filled with scrambled eggs, omelets, hash browns, and toast. I was setting the table when Inga yelled out, "What, is your sister 14? I've sent about a half a dozen guys to the hospital for making cracks about my sister. I've always been super protective of her, but Inga needs something to wear, thus I shouted back, "Look in my room!" The only reply was the sound of footsteps, but I eventually heard, "Oh, this is stylish." "Not." She was super tired, though, and settled for a large plush robe and who knows what underneath it. Even with all of that on, she was simply gorgeous and quite shapely, which was indeed the relevant conundrum, as my sister is very petite. I explained as she joined me at the table. "Living on the street does that to you. We were homeless until I joined up. I sent her everything, even souvenirs for her to sell. That's how we got this." I gestured to the apartment around us. Inga nodded and tore into the meal as she devoured 3 helpings of everything. Feeling somewhat revived, she explained, I hadn't slept or ate in 3 days. I'm wanted for being ethnically undesirable and an enemy of the state. I shook my head. Not anymore, you're not. Married to me, you're front page news. Her eyes wide with terror, as if the walls themselves were eavesdropping and about to turn her in, she said, I'm not pure. But I only smiled warmly. Poor Inga, however, was confused beyond imagination. She pointed to the wall of honor and said, I get it, you're this major war hero. You could have your pick of any woman in the empire. Why get involved with me? Why stick your neck out like that? I could see and feel the warmth of my smile melting away all the terror she had lived for who knows how long. I explained. It came to me in a flash, and I knew what to do. I could tell by the exasperated look on her face that I had not answered her question, thus I continued. At the front, we don't care about racial purity or any of that. You know what, that clipping of my sister's in the center of that case? She shook her head and I explained. Because of how proud I am of her. That was when she joined my team. We're the elite team. Spy stuff. Impossible missions, overwhelming odds, that's us. We get the best gear, people, etc., and I bring the kids back every single time. You name it, we've been there. I paused, a far-off look on my face, as I saw without seeing. Sometime later I resumed. It's about the person next to you, not the color of their skin, where they're from, their religion, or any of that. My sister's my second in command, but you know how I do all of that? Inga shook her head, and I let it all out. Things come to me like they did when you bumped into me in that instant. I knew everything I needed to know about you and what I had to do. She nodded slowly, pressing her palms together and placed them at her forehead as the tears came. Nothing more needed to be said, and with that, she let it all go. I simply sat, doing my best to be there for her, but not knowing hardly anything about her, and yet I knew everything I needed. As the tears subsided, she managed to smile and said, I am eternally in your debt. I smiled in return and said, get some rest and I'll get some clothes for you. She nodded eagerly at the thought of a warm, safe place to sleep. Before she vanished into my sister's room, she detailed her clothing sizes, and with that, I began cleaning up after our meal. I ignored the sounds of heavy furniture being moved up against the doors and waited until all was silent to go out in the morning to acquire clothing for her. I knocked softly at her door and said I'll be back soon, but there was no reply. There's a ladies' store down the street. I'd been there a lot with my sister, and needless to say, they were all thrilled beyond measure to learn I'd gotten married, thus everything was on the house. It was more than a fair trade for a few pictures of me and a video clip saying I was shopping for my wife. They were sitting on a major news story and about to get a huge boost to their business, so it was win-win. Inga was still out cold, but I had more than enough to occupy my time, as I still had over 2 weeks of leave remaining. Among other things, I had a mountain of mail. I'd already read everything from friends. I just needed to reply. Most of the electronic networks had long since gone down, thus the old-fashioned letters had come back. Only military networks were still up, and yeah, I had my mobile, but I wanted to be offline. Oh, I'd still get emergency alerts, but beyond that, I was ignoring it. Besides, I had this pile of paper mail from real people that I could see and feel. What a powerful experience, knowing someone had been moved to put paper to pen to write me, a complete stranger. I became so lost in the experience, I didn't hear the furniture moving back into place, or the door to my sister's room open the first time. Inga had found the packages I'd laid there, took them inside, and changed into one of the outfits. The sound of the door opening the second time snapped me back to reality, seated as I was on the hardwood floor in front of the fireplace in the living room of our top floor corner apartment overlooking the park. Inga was slender, about my age, and incredibly attractive, but of course I hadn't known any of that when we'd met. She smiled warmly upon seeing me and gestured to the couch. I smiled in return, the look on my face saying, of course, you don't need to ask. Her smile deepened as she nodded in appreciation of everything I had and continued to do for her. She gestured to the outfit, asking if I approved, but I think all I did was drool, but she seemed not to mind, taking that as a definitive yes. Words were spoken, but don't ask me to repeat them. We likely shared our life stories, thoughts on the war, our favorite colors, foods, none of it matters, we basked in the most divine of dances. It seemingly lasted for 3 days, which was until the next raid. Rather than the shelter, though, I led her to what I call the gun room, because that's what it is. We turned the third bedroom into an armory/safe room stocked with supplies and our tools of the trade. Not that I bring much home with me, but anyway. Inga was highly appreciative of not just the level of trust she was being shown, but also how proper I was. I mean, we were legally married, but she was also free, something she'd probably never known. As it turned out, it was the largest and longest raid I'd ever even heard of, but thankfully it was all across town. So we were safer than safe. We eventually ventured out onto the roof. Not like there's much else to do in a blackout when the power's out. It was a clear night and it was comfortable, thus she asked, "Can we sleep out here?" I nodded and we made it so. I gave her first choice and she set her gear up, then patted the patio beside her. I smiled deeply at the level of trust I was being shown and set up my gear next to her. The patio is this beautiful garden filled with plants and flowers. I go there often to relax and forget. And that is the end of chapter 1. If you like that and would like to hear more, please hit the like button and or subscribe, and I would love to hear your comments. Like I said, if you'd like to hear more, please let me know. And signed copies are available on my website, bethelighthouse.com, and you can also look inside of all my books. Thank you and have a great day.